All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started since it's 3:45. Hopefully everyone has enjoyed their first day at Twin Cities Drupal Camp. Yeah? Awesome. Thank you for sticking it out to the last session of the day. I know you may have gotten some sugar, but you may be still dragging a little bit. So I appreciate you being here. And if you're not looking to attend the current state of file entity media, you might want to find the right room. But that's what I'm going to be talking about for the next hour. And I've actually kind of made these slides available online if you wanted to follow along and don't like to look up. So it's davereid.github.io/presentation- the current date, year, month, day, and then -tc Drupal. Or if you want to look at it afterwards. And I'll post a link to this afterwards as well. So a little bit about me. I'm currently a senior engineer at Palantir.net that's based out of Chicago. We're an exclusively Drupal firm, and we got about 30% remote employees. I live in Omaha, Nebraska, and about 60% of our employees work in Chicago. I'm pretty simple to find everywhere. I use my real name, and I'm just Dave Reid on Twitter. IRC, it's the same. On Drupal, I'm my formal name, Dave Reid. And I'm kind of known for being the module guy. And if you've ever used modules like token or path auto or redirect or meta tag or those kind of modules, I've been involved with those. I work with core too. Not quite as much with Drupal 8 recently. I was heavily involved with Drupal 7 and I really enjoyed that process. But some other things have gotten in the way, like having a full-time job and having a kid. So not as much Drupal 8 time anymore. I have 2 cats. We'll see those in just a little bit because I like showing them off. And again, I'm a new dad and I'm proud of that. So
yeah, it's my birthday.
It's a good day. So you saw Rodney, who has his own Twitter handle, being gift wrapped here previously in the session, and here he is with a mustache. So he's kind of like the alternate Drupal mascot. We like to champion him. He did apply to run for the Drupal Association, but he was kind of rejected since he wasn't actually human. He tried. And my other cat that doesn't make quite as much of an appearance and does not like having mustaches applied is Athena. So yeah, those are my cats. So enough about cats. Let's dive into the meat of this. So maybe you've played with these modules before, maybe you've heard about them. So kind of first off, what I want to kind of describe is what these modules do. What are they responsible for? To kind of get a definition. Because we're talking about 2 different modules here. There's file entity and there's media. And it's kind of like, where do they divide? Where do the responsibilities lie? So what file entity does is it's a user interface for adding, editing, deleting files as first-person content, like premier content. You may have heard the word entities used before in Drupal 7. Files in core are actually entities, but they don't actually have a UI to manage those. You only manage them, through upload fields on nodes. File entity seeks to actually make that completely independent. Like it gives you a listing of all your files that you have. And just allows you to do and manage them as individual things. It allows you to make file types. This has kind of been something that's shifted a lot in our development. Because in order to do the next thing, which is add fields to files, you actually have to have groupings of file types. So there's an audio file type by default, or an image file type, a video file type. And then you can add individual fields to those file types. So when you add a video file, you can edit the video file fields. And you can keep the fields on images or videos separate and not have to use the same ones if you don't want to. And file entity also does kind of a big thing. Like I said, it's providing this UI for managing files because core doesn't do it. Core also does some other things, like it assumes that if you upload a file once, and then remove it from your node and save your node, it'll delete that file after 6 hours. And like, since you're no longer using that file and you can't actually get to it anymore, since core doesn't allow you to reuse files at all, why not just delete it? So like, it's assumptions like those that we kind of have to battle a little bit in file entity, and it's kind of the home location for those kind of workarounds / hacks kind of stuff. So hopefully you've maybe used file entity, because I'm going to start covering what's actually new in the 2x version of file entity. One thing that I kind of explained, the 2x version is currently unstable. And so like this cat, we're excited for new things, but like it's currently a little like, it may change a little bit. So we're trying to get it to a more releasable state, but just use it with caution, I think. So in the file entity 1 version, you had file types, but there was no real UI to edit those or change those around. One of the first things we did with file entity, the 2x version, is actually provide a UI for file types. Because you should be able to create them and edit them how you want to. At first, we did it, so we had file types based on MIME types. So MIME types are like the identified, what is this file? Like, it's an application / PDF for .pdf files. That's the MIME type. Or for a JPEG image, it's image / JPEG. It's just kind of a universal way of identifying what type of thing is contained in this file. So we used to like automatically map the first part, it's like application or image of the MIME type to what the file type is. But we kind of improved this even more. So we have our 4 default file types. And if I edit my image file type, I can see these are the MIME types. Image / star is a wildcard. So anything that has that MIME type or matches that will be classified as an image file. And we did, if you wanted to edit this list, you could. Our UI for editing this is not very graceful. It's basically just a giant list of all the possible MIME types that Drupal knows about. And you just have to copy and paste. So that's something that we will be looking to improve, hopefully. But we don't really have any good ideas for how to improve this, so I'd love to hear your thoughts if you do. But I could edit this, or I could actually make a new file type. So let's do that. Let's add a file type called screenshots, because I want a different field to be on this type of file versus my normal image files. And I'm going to say that it can respond to anything that has an image MIME type. Save. So there I've got my new file type. And let's add a field to this. And I'll like add software for a field of what I have a screenshot of. Save. All right, so we've got one field on our screenshot. So yeah, it's kind of nice. You can do all the stuff you want to. Another thing, you can manage the display right here. So I can, one of the odd things that's both in the 1x and 2x versions here is like configuring how this is displayed. So this is just kind of a little bit odd, but I kind of wanted to point it out. So there's 2 different managed displays. There's managed display and managed file display. Managed display is how the fields on files of this type are output. And managed file display is how the file itself is displayed of this type. So that's a little bit weird, I know, I'm sorry. We're going to figure out how to unify this a little bit. But you configure it, because you can view these files independently now too. For example, I've got, let's see. So this file entity module provides this file listing. So I can see all the images that have been uploaded on my site. I can edit, I can view, And this is just the file itself, not related to content or anything. It's treating files as content themselves. So yeah, so that's kind of the file types and what the changes we have there.
If you have an existing image, can you upload a new version of it? And then
I will get to that, yeah. Good question, though. Just wrong time to lead in. So when you're uploading a file, we've kind of improved the usability of this, because it's, if you'll note, when I made that screenshot file type, I said it can do image/star as the wildcard. Well, I've got two file types that now could respond to if you have an image. How do we resolve this? Typically, when you're creating content, you specify in advance what you're creating. Like, I'm going to create an article. I'm going to create a book page. And then you fill in the details. With files, it's a little bit different because we want you to just upload what you have, and we'll give you some choices then. So if I upload a file, let's see, and I hit next, I actually get this second step of like a wizard, essentially, that, hey, there's two different file types this could be. What is this? And so I would say image. If there was only one choice here, you wouldn't even see this part, which is nice. It just move on. If you have multiple different file systems enabled on your site, if you have public and private files enabled, or like Amazon S3, that kind of thing, you would get the choice of where should this file go, which is kind of nice. If there's only one, again, you wouldn't even see this part. And so now I'm at the last step. I've determined what type of file this is, so I can edit the fields for this as well. So I would fill this in and hit save, and that's my file's been uploaded now. This is kind of the independent workflow for uploading files. This should be integrated with the media module, which I'll kind of show. If not, we're working on it. So, but this is kind of like our way of uploading and the kind of wizard process. If you have thoughts on this, see me later. So we did do some like built-in improvements for accessibility. So by default, you have alternate and title text fields available on your image file types, since those have a way to display. So it's just nice to get them out of the box. And as we saw in the upload, I could fill those values in. And then under our managed file display, if I scroll down here, I can kind of see where this takes effect. So if I have just the generic image kind of display configured for this file type, I can actually set what my alternate text should come from, and it's a field using tokens. So you could actually change what source this should come from if you wanted to, but we set this up by default, so it just kind of works, which is nice. I guess I can kind of cover this screen too, because this may be a little bit confusing for people. So we saw the managed display, but this is the managed file display. And what it basically does is you enable specific displays that could be run on this file. And then you order them in highest priority to lowest priority. So if I have a YouTube file that I link to or create, if I have my YouTube file display configured first, it'll try and run that. And the YouTube module will say, yes, that's a YouTube file. That's great. I can configure how that should be displayed. And it'll output what it needs to. And it'll come back and be, hey, did you return me something I can show? And it's like, yes, you did. Great. I'll display that and stop. You know, if YouTube module said, no, that's silly. That's an image. I don't know about that. That's not a YouTube file. It'd say, I'm going to return nothing. And then file entity would go down and try the next thing. So that's kind of how this process works. It's confusing, so hopefully that maybe clears it up if any of you haven't seen that yet. So file replacement, great question. So we did add some basic file replacement functionality to the file entity module. So if I'm on the edit page here, I actually have this just very basic replace file upload button. So it'll only be available if your file is local. We're not sure how to handle this with like remote files yet and how that process works. So it's only available for local files right now. And if I replace the file, I just get an option. This was Mount St. Helens, but now it's going to be a cat. And we're going to save. Oh. I have a fun experimental module enabled on my site that's causing errors. That's great. But here I can actually see that that file replacement has taken effect now once I've hit the edit form again. And Mount St. Helens is now a cat. So what this does, it actually replaces the existing file on your Drupal file system. It doesn't copy the old one, which is an option if you're doing file replacement. Like, it's one way to do it. But we kind of decided to keep it simple and just replace the file as it is on the file system with whatever you upload. That way, we don't have to handle, like, if you linked to that file in the file system, like on your body fields or something, we don't have to worry about those at all. It should just work. One of the interesting things about this is, though, if you have browser caching enabled, which pretty much everyone does, because browsers have that enabled by default, you have to like hit Control F5 to like really reload, because we need to trigger that image to be cleared out of the browser cache. And we're not quite sure if we can do anything with that, because Drupal doesn't give us a way to alter image output effectively. So it's like you won't see that replacement take effect right away, especially if it's an image. So that's just kind of one note on that. If you have ideas how to solve that, I'd love to hear them. So a few code level things that we put in the file entity. There's actually a file access API. So it's kind of nice because like I can do things like restrict access to files someone has uploaded unless those files are older than 1 hour. Like if I have some kind of like security review process that goes through and processes all my files, or deny access to files unless they've been uploaded to S3. Like you can do any kind of custom logic you want. There's a hook, there's alters, there's a query tag if you're using the database query. There's some just kind of examples here. One of the nice things actually about this, I was talking with some Drupal commerce maintainers recently, and they're trying to do a new version of like selling access to files, which that's a valid e-commerce thing to do. And I was like, hey, we kind of wrote something that would be great for this. So they'll be able to take advantage of that in the new version of commerce file. We also have a metadata API as well. So for anything that really shouldn't be edited by a user, stuff like image dimensions, video dimensions, EXIF tags, that kind of stuff, just the properties that really shouldn't be edited, we have a nice centralized way of storing those, so you don't have to make your own database table, that kind of thing. You can just dump it in the file data array, which is nice. And there's some other miscellaneous things too. We actually added a download link formatter, and that sounds really boring, but kind of going back to this commerce file thing, it's an interesting use case, because if you're selling access to a file, you don't actually want to give the user the direct URL of the file, especially if you're using like public files, that kind of stuff, because once they have it, they have direct access to the file regardless if like it exists or not, or like if they have access or not. You've given them the full file system URL. With file entity, you actually get a callback at file/file ID, which is a numeric value, /download. And that triggers a browser download of the file, regardless of where it lives. And the interesting case here is that we actually add a token string to that URL based on the current user. So like one user can't paste a download URL and give it to another user. It won't work. So if you need like that kind of more secure access, or if you need to like track downloads, like intercept the process of downloads, so like I have a download count module that works with this. You can use that. So there's a formatter that does that link for you. Since it's a little complex to get set up with the token and everything. We added more views, filters, and fields and sorts for all the kind of stuff that we're adding to files, all the file types, that kind of stuff. And we actually have URL alias support, redirect support. You can edit the owner of the file now. So yeah, it's just some nice usability things. So what do we have left to do in the 2x version of file entity to get a stable release? So one of the things we want to make sure we get done before we have a stable release is just some simple HTML5 formatters for audio and video. Because it's a funny problem. If you upload an MP3 file to your site or an AVI file to your site using file entity and core only, there's no way to actually display that file. Like you can download it, but you can't view it or play it. So we just wanted to add some simple like, hey, just put an audio tag, and like if the browser supports HTML5, it'll work. Or a video tag. And it'd be nice to have that enabled by default. So we want to add those in. It'd be nice to have HTML5 uploading. So I think a lot of the common solution is plupload that people have used to like be able to drag and drop multiple files, or like have the nice UI of I want to drag another file in and it shows me the AJAX process or the progress of everything. Currently, the integration between file entity and plupload is unknown or not working. So we want to maybe reinvestigate this and see if we can do anything, or just kind of fix the integration, that kind of stuff. And then, so the very fun one that I kind of told before is the file usage problem, where if you upload a file once, save your node, go edit the node, remove the file, save the node again, that file will no longer be available on your file system. I don't really know of any other CMS systems that do this out of the box, which is kind of odd for Drupal. I don't know if it's a feature that people want. But it's kind of a problem that we have once you talk about adding in media, which lets you reuse files, or any other module that lets you reuse files. So we're trying to see if we can fix this from file entity in Drupal 7. In Drupal 8, we actually have a core patch proposed to like disable or extend this window from 6 hours to 3 months. If you haven't used a file in 3 months, maybe it could be safe for deletion then. And I showed that file access API. It has a query tag version. Hopefully, maybe some of you know what that means. But if you are running a query against the file managed table and want to do access checking for multiple files all at once, it doesn't quite work yet. But the individual file access works just fine. And of course, cleaning up and documenting. That's always a task we need to do. And something we don't really need for a stable release, but once we have kind of a stable or an alpha release is we want to start porting this module to Drupal 8. Because we kind of had a lofty goal to get this module included in Drupal 8, but it never really happened. And we weren't really ready either, so it's why force it? So we're going to try and get the module ported fairly early in the Drupal cycle and kind of get it prepped for inclusion in Drupal 9. I say that, but that means it won't be like usable for 6 years in core, but it'll be ready in contrib. It'll be in contrib, don't worry. Just it's enabling one more module. So that's the file entity side of things. So thinking of that, it's kind of more just, okay, I'm interacting with files, seeing them as independent things, and kind of just granting that first class status to files. What does media do then? So it actually provides the widget that you can add for your file and image fields to get your media browser. So it's responsible for all that logic. And of course, the media browser itself is part of the media module. So reusing and selecting an existing file. It handles logic for internet or web files. So pasting in a link to a file, that's all handled by media. And it also handles the WYSIWYG usage, or WYSIWYG handling. So it adds the button in the WYSIWYG, and it's responsible for tracking whenever you use a file in a WYSIWYG, because it's important, like I said. Because if a file set is not used, it gets deleted in 6 hours. So it's kind of important that it keeps track. And we used to have a media field type in the 1x version of media. That's now, like, I would say severely deprecated to the point where we actually put deprecated in the module name, so don't enable it. We're going to have to work on an upgrade path for that for people using 1x. But just use file or image fields with the media widget now in the 2x version. So let's cover what we've put in media 2x then. File entity had lots of great stuff. Let's see what's in media. So kind of the first big thing that we did, we had a sprint in 2011, I believe, in Chicago. That we were opening up the 2x branch, and it's like, okay, what should we really get started on first? And we're like, man, there's a lot of this code for the media browser that just, it's so much JavaScript and like so much heavy code debt for us to maintain. If only there was like a module out there that like lets you list things and filter and sort them and like could display them. That'd be really awesome if there was a module for that. Turns out there is. So that was one of the first things that we did, is actually kind of replaced the media browser with views, with a little bit of glue code to get views to output things the way we needed it to make it work in the media browser. And it actually ended up being much less code then, which is really great. And it also opens up this really great possibility that you can customize media browsers. You can add a different media browser view. Out of the box, we have a My Files display in the media browser that only shows the files you've uploaded. And it's really great. You could have a media view of, show me only files that belong to nodes that the user is a group, like organic groups member of. Like, it has some cool aspects to this, and it's really flexible. You can add filters. So, like, all these things are just views, so you can do whatever you want with it. It's really nice, and we don't have to maintain the code since you can export this as a view. So this is really one of the biggest improvements, and just we're still riding the coattails of this awesomeness in the Media 2x version. So yeah, and another interesting thing is that, let's go to a field. So I've got an image field using the media file selector. In the 2x version here, there's this new feature that you can actually select which kind of media browser tabs should be available. So if I only wanted people to use the library, I would select that checkbox. Or if I wanted them to use everything, I'd just leave them all unchecked. Or if I wanted to have them use upload only or my files, I could do that. And it's a really nice way to control that editorial workflow for your users. So that's really nice. So let's save this. And to just kind of show off that media browser as well. So there I've selected the two tabs that should be visible. I've only got my upload and my files. So just it kind of works all nicely together. So yeah. And I can, again, this is views all powering this, and I can submit it. I can edit the file, so I can edit all my fields and everything. I can do file replacement from here, which is kind of crazy. So yeah. Yeah.
Can you show how this would work with the WYSIWYG editor?
Sure. Let me see if I have that configured. There we go. OK, so let's show the configuration really quick. So I've got my CK editor. We provide this new media browser button. So you enable that. Another key is in your text format. So full HTML is the one I have. You need to have this enabled as well. Convert media tags to markup. If you try and enable one without the other, or if you try to enable the WYSIWYG button without having this checked, it'll actually give you a warning. So once you have those two things enabled, let's go back here. So this is my media button here. And I've got my 4 tabs enabled by default. And you're putting me on the spot, so I'm going to hope this works. And I'm also doing this inside an iframe, which is fun. So I've got my file. I can select how I want this file to be displayed. These are view modes. So it would correspond to how I've configured this file type to be displayed. Let's just do default. I can set specific alternate text here. OK. Cancel. And there I can see I've got it embedded in my WYSIWYG. There may be some oddities with non-standard, like trying to do this with PDF files or videos. I think there's some outstanding bugs related to those. So if you encounter those, just check the issue queue. But it kind of works. It mostly works.
Which version of the CK editor library are you using for that?
I'm using the 3.6 version. Yeah, CK Editor 4 doesn't quite work yet. And we have an open task to fix that. And that's probably one of the things we're going to work on Sunday. So yeah, views. That was really great. That was a good improvement. What else have we changed in Media 2X?
Can I add something really quick about what you just did?
You're going to interrupt my flow, though. I'll have you save it for a little bit, yeah. So I can't really point to a lot of really cool things we added to Media 2X because there really hasn't been a whole lot. We've done a ton of bug fixes, a ton of keeping media in sync with file entity and making sure it respects all the new stuff with file entity. But there's not a whole lot more. So that's kind of one of the things I'm looking to see, like maybe we need to reevaluate, or maybe this is more ready than we think. One of the new things that is added is we actually have like real competition in the module space now. So you may have heard of this module called Scaldi. It's not pronounced Scald, it's Scaldi. It's put out by a French development firm, and it's quite widely famous and popular for Drupal installations in Europe, and it's starting to gain a little bit of traction. And it's kind of like pushing us to do better a little bit, which is good. And they're doing some really interesting stuff with their UIs as well. They kind of have an odd concept of atoms for media stuff, whereas media and file entity, we want everything represented as files. YouTube files are technically files in Drupal, even though they're YouTube files. You did have to upload something to YouTube, so technically it was a file. So we kind of enforced that, but they kind of virtualized that a little bit and made this atom concept, which could have a file, or it could be a YouTube or like a Twitter tweet as an atom. So it's kind of interesting the things that they're doing. We're actually looking to kind of cooperate a little bit more between these two teams, but like this is something that's new. It's like, okay, maybe we're not solving the use cases fast enough or getting stuff worked on that people need. Like, there's other solutions coming in. Maybe that's a red flag for us. Maybe it's a good thing. We'll see. So what do we have left in media to do then? So like I said, we want to fix the integration with the new version of CK Editor, the version 4 and up, because that's currently not working. We want to take a look at improving the UX for uploading and browsing. If I hit that edit button in the widget, it kind of used a CTools modal, which isn't looking very nice. Or like the uploading process, if you want to upload multiple files, you have to do them all individually. So Kevin O'Leary from Acquia is a usability kind of expert in that domain, and he's been kind of working on some mock-ups and UX screenshots for how the ideal media browser could work. And we reviewed that with the Scaldi team in Portland, actually, kind of together to identify things that would or would not work with our projects and needed to be tweaked in the UX. And we actually kind of agreed with a consensus that, hey, that looks really great. What if media was the one to implement this new UX, and Scaldi and FileEntity kind of were the powering underneath of it, but used the same UI. So we'll kind of evaluate that. It's not going to block a stable release, though. And that may be only for the Drupal 8 version of media as well. And like I said, coordination between the two projects. We're starting to have more dialogue, cooperation rather than competition, I think, is a good thing. Did you want to hit that question now? OK. All right, sorry. So I wanted to cover some kind of interesting things happening in the file and media ecosystem. Our primary modules are FileEntity and media. That's the ones that we heavily focus on. But there's all these modules that extend the stuff that we're doing and do some cool things I kind of wanted to share. So yeah, some cool stuff, like a cat high-fiving a human. And I like putting GIFs in presentations now. So there's this interesting module called FileEntity Inline, written by Nate Haug, Quick Sketch, who's here. And it actually is kind of like an alternate widget for file and image fields. So you'd use this instead of the media widget. And it's actually interesting because it actually allows you to edit the fields on the files right there in the widget. Like you would upload, and then you'd see the fields that you have selected for inline editing right there. Currently with media, you have to click the edit button to get that pop-up to edit any fields. But this allows you to do it inline. So we may graciously steal some code from this, possibly. But if you don't need the media browser and you just want some fields and files, this may be a good solution for you. So I'll be the first one to not use my modules if I don't have to. So I'm using a project where we're using file field attach instead of media. It's perfectly valid. FileEntity Paths is kind of the new version of file field path, I think is the module name. So when you upload a file, you'd specify a custom, where should this file go once it's been uploaded. It should go to the node content type / the year and subdirectories, that kind of thing. But that doesn't really work if we're thinking about files as first-class citizens who aren't necessarily attached to content. So this is kind of like the new version of that module that works in this abstract first-class model, as well as for files attached to content. So I kind of encourage people using the file field paths module to use. Maybe check this one out. File lock is an interesting module. So I'm going to reiterate on the file usage issue. So again, if your file has no usage, it could possibly be deleted. File lock is like the hammer solution to this problem. Literally every time a new file is added, if it matches a certain condition or if you've set it to do for all files, it'll add a file usage custom to this module that will never ever be deleted. So literally every file that's uploaded will always have usage no matter what, which is a decent solution. It's the hammer solution, but it works. Or more like the bulldozer solution, I guess. So I mean, we're kind of encouraging people to check this out if you're having that problem. It works right now. And FileEntity does respect, I should say FileEntity, if you go in your file listing, go to delete a file in the UI, it'll warn you if there's usage, but still let you delete it. So there is still a way to delete files. It's more of a manual process with this module installed. So check that out. There's this remote stream wrapper module written by this Reid guy, who actually has some current bugs that don't make this module usable with the current version of file entity, and he needs to fix that. But one of the cool things is that with media, if you type in the web tab a path to a file that like just an image on a server, and nothing like YouTube or Instagram can say, yeah, that's my file, I can claim it. What media will actually do is try and download that file locally and save it. But there's actually cases where we don't want that to happen. Like, what if it's a 500 megabyte MP3 file or a large video file? You don't want that file downloaded to your system. It's going to take a while, and it's like, no, let's just leave it remote. I just want to use it. So this actually lets you use those remote files and leave them remote. So it's kind of nice. It adds a media browser tab for remote file. You type in the URL, and it says, that's great. It's a remote file. I'm going to add it as a file in Drupal, but let you still use it. So, and it keeps it. So it's an interesting use case there. OEmbed is a really great module. So typically, when you're going to embed stuff like YouTube and Vimeo and all the providers, typically you'd always have a module, like you'd install media YouTube, you'd install media Vimeo, like a module for each thing, for each service that you try to embed from. OEmbed is actually more of a standardized way of doing all of those with just one module. And it's really nice because you don't have to go enable and find a new way to embed content. You can just use OEmbed if it supports it. And there's actually a service called Embedly, which adds OEmbed support for things that don't usually support it. So it actually works with stuff that doesn't support OEmbed. So if you're looking to embed content like that, I would actually check out this module and use this one. Give that a try. So I just want to briefly cover the media initiative before we kind of adjourn for questions. So like we've covered all this great stuff, but maybe you're interested in helping out. That would be awesome. I would love that if you would help out. Maybe I guilted you into helping out a little bit. So we have this thing called Media Initiative. There's various core initiatives like configuration management, that kind of thing. And it's a nice way of banding people together to try and make change or make improvements. So we're not an official initiative like bestowed upon by Dries. We're just our own kind of, we're our own kind of group doing our own thing, but trying to get people together to help. And there's a lot of things to help with too. But how can you get involved? Let's see. Well, some of the things we do, we have a bi-weekly IRC meeting on Thursday afternoon Central Time, where we kind of get together and discuss what we're working on, active issues, that kind of stuff. We haven't been very good about keeping that meeting very regular recently, but we're going to continue to try and get that going again. Our next meeting will be next Thursday, if you want to join us in that IRC channel. We've got some links to things where we hang out in our IRC channels, #Drupal-media. So I mean, just if you want to take a look at the issue queue and maybe help triage things, like maybe I can help reproduce this bug. That's helping us out. If you want to come into our IRC channel, help answer questions, that's helping us out too. Like, you don't necessarily need to be a coder to help us out. People that can help document how things work, so I can stop talking about them, that would be great too. Because I'm not very good at documenting my own things, unfortunately. So some very specific times that we kind of have some things lined up for trying to gather a lot of momentum. Of course, at this event right here, on Sunday at the Nerdery, we're going to be sprinting all day, and we're actually having a media sprint as part of that. Last year, it was really super productive, and I'm hoping we can have that again this year. So if you're interested, I would love to have you come on Sunday. Some other events around the area that we're having media sprints. The Drupal Corn Camp in Iowa City, we'll be having a sprint on Sunday there. And then there's an a Midwest Developer Summit, which is going to be like really high level. Dries will be there. We're going to be sprinting on some core things with file management and also maybe porting file entity to Drupal 8, starting to get that going there. And again, next Thursday at, I think, 3 p.m. Central is our next IRC meeting. And of course, you don't have to wait for these to come help us out. It's really great. These are great momentum building events. But pop into IRC anytime. Say hi or file a bug report. That's helping as well because it helps us figure things out and get things solved. So we'd love to have your help. That's really all I have. So if you have any questions or things you'd like to see demoed really in the 10 minutes or so that we have left, I'd love to hear those. Yes?
Do you have a hit list posted for the sprint on Sunday somewhere that you've, or is it just basically go to the issue queue and look around? Can you repeat that for me?
Sure. So the question is, do we have like a hit list of stuff that we're going to be working on in the sprint? Let's see if I can type. We're using a certain tag. And where is it? Nope. There it is. This is kind of our list of anything that's using the 7.x-2.0 alpha blocker in the issue queue. We have a link to it in IRC too, and I'll maybe tweet some of these links after the session here today too. So anything kind of in this list that is open are the stuff that we're really focusing on. So like, there's not that much left for file entity. There's only 4 issues left, which is good. So yeah, it's that alpha blocker tag is what we're working from. All right, any other questions at all, or things you want, various stump the Dave kind of things, or yes?
So I've used media module a couple of times on sites, and users get confused because some of the files show up in the media browser and some of them do not.
So the question is, users possibly find the media browser confusing because files are sometimes showing up but sometimes not?
Yeah, sometimes they upload them themselves and they don't see them. Are there any, so in other words, if a site has a bunch of files that it's using in the media browser and can't see them, are there ways to import lots of files that already exist on a site?
Okay, so that's thank you for leading the question a little bit. So, if you've maybe like done an FTP and mass like transferred a bunch of files into your files directory, technically they won't show up in the media browser because they're not a file in Drupal yet. We only show files Drupal knows about. So one of the things that we do actually have is under content and the file page, we have this. If you have the media module installed, it's called import files. And no one really knows exactly how this works, which is kind of interesting. But I believe that you like pass it a directory, something like that, and you say, okay, import all the JPEG files, or just import everything. So if you use this and you find it confusing, it'd be great because we need to document this better on the screen how to use this. Or make this just a more usable thing. Like maybe you'd have something that says if this is a directory or not, or I don't know. Ways to improve this would be encouraged, accepted. So, but I would encourage you to use this if that's the problem you're encountering. So, yes.
One of the challenges I found is that, and this isn't really a problem with media or file entity per se, but it's just like after a while you start getting a lot of files, and it's kind of hard to figure out how to display them to people in a way that makes sense to them. So, I mean, do you think the best solution to that is to just add, use filtering or expose filters or
Yeah.
things like that, or I mean, what are some ways to deal with that?
So the question is, once we've got a ton of files on our system, how do we actually make them usable for our users to find anymore? I definitely would encourage the use of making custom media browser reviews or overriding the default one, adding filters where you want. With the concept of fields on files, you could add filters by those fields. So like if you have them tagged with taxonomy terms, you could add a taxonomy filter to your view and be able to limit based on those types of things. Like, I think it's more of a categorization problem. There's not much you can do if it's just a lot of files.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, to be fair, something like iPhoto has the same problem. Because all you have is img-3779.jpg, but it's hard. It's hard to work. That's all you have to work with.
Yeah, so that's why I would encourage people to set up good patterns for categorizing files. So do it early rather than later. So yes.
Say that your university has purchased kind of a crappy transcoding and streaming service.
Hypothetical, okay.
And you're like the one person on campus that's been using it extensively. But no, what I'm kind of curious about is with file entity, what's the relative pain of creating? I mean, I'm guessing this is a path you would take to creating a new, I don't even know what you call it. Like basically it's something that responds to a MIME type. Yet one more thing. So, when I see an audio clip uploaded, then I'm going to sync up to my transcoding server, do a bunch of stuff. But I also want to sort of add fields in there, like so the user can enter a transcoding profile and all that kind of stuff. That all would happen as I was thinking that would happen in the media module, but really that's going to happen in the file entity. Like that's going to be an add-on to the file entity module.
Yeah, I would. So the question is, how could we inject like transcoding processes or, all those types of like derivative generation and stuff. There's really no good solution because it's a hard problem to solve in a generic fashion. But yeah, looking at the problem from doing it from a file perspective, I would definitely encourage rather than the media issue. Once a new file is created, you can respond to that. You could add the file to a queue in Drupal, and if it matches certain things, then do whatever processing you want in custom code. And then you could go back and save that file again with a new URI. Like you could save the file using the S3 version and just kind of update that file in place, essentially, which would leave the copy on your server, or you could remove the old version. But yeah, I would definitely encourage you to take a look at stuff from the file perspective. It's not too much of a good answer, but.
Yeah, no, I'll take a look.
All right.
It's better than my retrofit of the file field.
Yeah, I don't know at all what system you're talking about. Yeah.
No, yeah.
Yes.
Any tips from migrating from 1 to 2? I've tried it a couple times, had various degrees of success. I have to actually start over with one of the databases. Is there any specific caveats or things to look out for?
So the question is, are there anything to look out for when migrating between the two versions, 1x and 2x? I think the one thing to be careful is if you're using the media field type. Okay, so you're not using that. Do you remember what specific things you had problems with?
Yeah,
or?
It's in conjunction with the YouTube module as well. The web file type just kind of disappeared.
Got it, yeah. So there's probably some issues with like the display configurations being lost between the two versions. I would say file it as a bug with what you've encountered. It may duplicate something we already have, but at least it could help us with like a specific thing to test. And it may be a media YouTube issue.
Yeah, I was
like,
sure, yeah.
And we'll go from there. So it's kind of a hard thing to say definitively, but yeah, if you could file a bug report on things that you encountered, I'd love to see that. That'd be great, yeah. All right, I think that's it for now. So thank you very much for coming in. So.